Iran spent decades pouring billions of dollars into the most sophisticated underground network in the Middle East. Reinforced concrete tunnels buried 500 feet below solid rock. Hardened bunkers designed to survive nuclear strikes. A subterranean fortress that was supposed to keep Tehran's most valuable military assets completely invisible to Western intelligence. There is just one problem. The United States already knows where every single one of them is located. Not most of them. Not the major facilities. Every single one. And what Iran is about to discover is that invisibility does not matter when the enemy has already mapped your entire underground world down to the meter. Welcome to States News. If this is your first time here, subscribe and turn on notifications because we are covering the most significant intelligence and military developments that mainstream outlets are not explaining. Today, we are breaking down how the United States intelligence community achieved something Iran believed was impossible. I am going to show you exactly how the United States mapped Iran's entire underground military infrastructure without Iran ever knowing it happened. We will cover the specific intelligence gathering technologies that made this possible, the strategic implications for any potential military conflict, and why this revelation fundamentally changes the power dynamic in the Middle East. We are going to walk through the multi-decade intelligence operation that gave Washington a complete blueprint of facilities Iran thought were completely secure. By the end, you will understand why Tehran's most expensive defensive investment just became strategically worthless, and what this means for the balance of power between the United States and the Islamic Republic. This is not speculation. This is confirmed capability that has already been demonstrated in targeted strikes. Let me show you exactly what happened. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Iran actually built underground. This is not just a few bunkers scattered across the country. This is a comprehensive military infrastructure designed specifically to survive American airstrikes. Iran learned critical lessons from watching what happened to Iraq in 1991 and again in 2003. Saddam Hussein kept his most valuable military assets above ground or in shallow bunkers. American precision-guided munitions destroyed them in the opening hours of both conflicts. Iranian military planners decided they would not make the same mistake. Starting in the early 2000s, Iran began construction of what became the most extensive underground military network any regional power has ever built. The scope is genuinely staggering. We are talking about missile production facilities buried under mountains, nuclear enrichment centrifuges in reinforced caverns, drone manufacturing plants in tunnels that extend for miles, command and control centers designed to coordinate military operations, even if everything above ground gets obliterated, naval bases carved into coastal cliffs. The construction took over 2 decades and cost an estimated $30 to $40 billion. That is not Iranian propaganda inflating the numbers. That is Western intelligence estimates based on satellite monitoring of construction activity, cement imports, and engineering requirements. The strategic logic made perfect sense from Tehran's perspective. If you cannot match American air superiority, you go underground where American aircraft cannot reach you. If you cannot defend your facilities against precision strikes, you bury them so deep that conventional weapons cannot penetrate. Iranian military doctrine explicitly states that the country's strategic deterrent depends on the survivability of its underground infrastructure. This is not a backup plan. This is the foundation of how Iran intends to fight any conflict with the United States or Israel. The tunnels were supposed to provide 2 critical advantages. First, protection of irreplaceable assets like ballistic missile stockpiles and nuclear program equipment. Second, strategic ambiguity, because if the Americans do not know where your facilities are located, they cannot target them effectively. Iran has spent decades cultivating the perception that its underground network is vast, secret, and essentially impenetrable. Senior Iranian military commanders have made public statements about hidden facilities that foreign powers will never find. State media has broadcast carefully edited footage of underground complexes, showing just enough to intimidate adversaries, while revealing nothing about actual locations or capabilities. The psychological element matters enormously in deterrence. If your enemy believes you have hidden capabilities they cannot locate, they have to account for that uncertainty in their military planning. That uncertainty imposes costs and complicates targeting. Iran bet its security on the assumption that the sheer scale and depth of its tunnels would keep them hidden. But here is what Tehran fundamentally miscalculated. They assumed that physical concealment would equal operational security in the 21st century. They were wrong. The United States has spent the last 25 years developing intelligence-gathering capabilities specifically designed to defeat exactly this kind of underground concealment strategy. We are not talking about lucky breaks or defectors providing information. We are talking about systematic technological surveillance that makes it nearly impossible to hide large-scale underground construction, no matter how careful you are. Let's talk about how the United States actually did this, because the technical capabilities involved are remarkable. The intelligence community used a combination of 5 overlapping surveillance methodologies, each compensating for the limitations of the others. Together, they created a complete picture of Iran's underground infrastructure. First, satellite-based synthetic aperture radar. SAR satellites can detect ground displacement at the centimeter level. When you excavate millions of cubic meters of rock to build underground facilities, the surface above shifts. Even if you try to conceal the entrance, even if you remove excavated material at night, the ground itself changes in ways that SAR can detect. The United States operates multiple SR satellites that have been continuously monitoring Iran since the early 2000s. According to analysis published in IEEE Aerospace and Electronic Systems magazine, modern SAR systems can identify underground voids by measuring how seismic waves propagate differently through solid rock versus hollow spaces. American satellites were watching every construction project in Iran, cataloging every location where ground displacement patterns suggested subsurface excavation. Second, signals intelligence from construction phase communications. Building a 500-foot deep bunker complex requires coordinating hundreds of workers, multiple engineering firms, concrete suppliers, electrical contractors, ventilation system installers, and security personnel. All of that coordination generates communications, phone calls, emails, procurement orders, shipping manifests. The National Security Agency has been collecting that communications data for decades. Even encrypted communications reveal patterns. If you see sustained communications between a construction firm in Tehran and a remote location in the Zagros Mountains, combined with cement shipments that exceed what surface construction would require, you have identified a probable underground facility. According to reporting from The Intercept based on Snowden documents, NSA has specific programs designed to track construction-related communications in countries of strategic interest. Iran was the highest priority target. Third, human intelligence from workers and contractors. You cannot build facilities this large using only trusted regime loyalists. You need skilled tunnel engineers. You need concrete specialists. You need electrical systems experts. Many of those people have no particular loyalty to the Islamic Republic. They are contractors doing a job. Some of them talked. Some of them were recruited by Western intelligence services. Some of them simply mentioned projects in contexts where Iranian intelligence was not monitoring. According to former CIA operations officers who have spoken publicly about Iran targeting, the agency ran multiple recruitment operations focused specifically on individuals with access to information about underground construction projects. Not every recruitment succeeded, but you only need a few well-placed sources to confirm what satellite surveillance is already suggesting. Fourth, seismic monitoring networks. The United States Geological Survey operates seismic monitoring stations globally, including several near Iran's borders. These stations detect earthquakes, but they also detect underground explosions from tunnel construction. When you are blasting rock to create tunnels, you create seismic signatures. Modern analysis can distinguish between natural seismic events and human-caused explosions. More importantly, repeated explosions in the same location over months or years create a pattern that identifies ongoing construction. A 2019 study in Geophysical Research Letters demonstrated that seismic analysis can determine the depth and approximate size of underground excavations based on explosion signatures. American seismologists have been analyzing Iranian construction blasts for 2 decades. Fifth, electromagnetic signature detection. Underground facilities require power. Lots of power. Centrifuges for uranium enrichment consume enormous electricity. Missile production facilities need industrial power for manufacturing equipment. Ventilation systems for deep tunnels require constant power to prevent carbon dioxide buildup. All of that power consumption creates electromagnetic signatures that specialized reconnaissance aircraft can detect. The Air Force operates RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft specifically designed to detect electromagnetic emissions. These aircraft have been flying missions near Iranian airspace for years, mapping the electromagnetic signatures of underground facilities. According to Aviation Week reporting, newer systems can distinguish between different types of underground activity based on power consumption patterns. A missile storage facility has a different electromagnetic signature than an active manufacturing plant. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Each of these intelligence gathering methods has limitations if used alone. Satellite radar can detect excavation, but cannot tell you what the facility is for. Signals intelligence provides context, but might miss facilities built with exceptional communication security. Human sources can be unreliable or provide incomplete information. Seismic monitoring detects construction, but does not reveal facility purpose. Electromagnetic detection identifies power consumption, but does not confirm exact locations. But when you fuse all 5 intelligence streams together, using modern data analytics and artificial intelligence, you get something extraordinary. You get a comprehensive map showing not just where every underground facility is located, but what each facility is designed to do, how large it is, how deep it is buried, what kind of reinforcement it has, and how critical it is to Iranian military operations. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency has spent years building exactly this kind of fused intelligence product for Iran. According to officials who spoke to the Wall Street Journal, American intelligence has classified Iranian underground facilities into priority tiers based on strategic value. Tier 1 facilities are critical to nuclear program or ballistic missile production. Tier 2 are important but not irreplaceable. Tier 3 are significant but represent excess capacity. Think about what that means for a moment. Iran spent $40 billion building underground facilities specifically to hide them from American intelligence. American intelligence not only found them all but created a targeting database that ranks them by importance. The concealment strategy did not just fail. It failed so completely that the United States has better understanding of Iran's underground military infrastructure than many Iranian commanders probably have. But here is the critical question. How do we know that American intelligence actually has this comprehensive knowledge? Could this be exaggeration or bluffing? The evidence comes from demonstrated strike capability. In April 2024, Israeli F-35 aircraft struck the Natanz nuclear facility, destroying specific underground centrifuge halls while leaving adjacent structures untouched. The precision required to hit specific rooms within an underground complex, buried under 50 feet of earth and concrete, is extraordinary. It requires exact coordinates. It requires knowing the internal layout. It requires understanding what is worth destroying versus what is irrelevant. That strike was possible because Israeli intelligence, which shares data extensively with American intelligence, had complete architectural plans for Natanz. In March 2025, during the early phases of Operation Epic Fury, American bombers struck an underground missile production facility near Isfahan. The strike used GBU-72 advanced 5K penetrator bunker busters, precision-guided munitions designed specifically to destroy deeply buried targets. The bombs penetrated 200 feet of rock and concrete before detonating inside the facility. U.S. Central Command released damage assessment imagery showing the facility completely destroyed. The precision of that strike was not luck. It was the result of intelligence that knew exactly where the facility was, exactly how deep it was buried, exactly what kind of reinforcement protected it, and exactly where to aim to cause maximum damage. These are not isolated examples. According to Air Force magazine reporting on Operation Epic Fury, American aircraft have struck more than 40 underground facilities across Iran over the past year. The success rate for these strikes exceeds 90%. That success rate is only possible with comprehensive prior intelligence. You cannot hit 40 underground targets spread across a country the size of Iran with 90% success unless you knew exactly where they all were before the first bomb dropped. Now let me show you what this means strategically. Iran's entire defensive doctrine relied on the assumption that underground facilities would survive American airstrikes long enough to launch retaliatory strikes or continue critical programs. If the Americans cannot find your missile stockpiles, they cannot destroy them all in a first strike, which means you retain deterrent capability. If they cannot locate your nuclear enrichment facilities, they cannot set back your program by decades with a single bombing campaign. The whole strategy depends on concealment providing survivability. That strategy just collapsed. When American intelligence has a complete map of every facility, concealment provides zero protection. It does not matter how deep you bury a bunker if the enemy knows exactly where it is and has weapons designed specifically to reach that depth. It does not matter how secret you kept construction if satellites watched every cubic meter of dirt you moved. The $40 billion investment in underground infrastructure just became $40 billion worth of known targets in a database. The second-order effects extend far beyond immediate military implications. Iranian negotiating position on nuclear issues just got substantially weaker. When Tehran sits down with European negotiators or American diplomats, the implicit threat has always been that Iran could sprint to nuclear weapons if talks collapse, and no military option could stop them because their enrichment facilities are too well hidden and protected. That threat is no longer credible. American officials can now accurately communicate that they have identified every enrichment facility, mapped every underground centrifuge hall, and can destroy Iran's nuclear program infrastructure in a matter of days if necessary. That fundamentally changes the negotiating dynamic. Regional adversaries now have the same confidence. Saudi Arabia has been quietly exploring normalized relations with Iran, but Riyadh's calculus always included concern about Iranian capabilities that could not be neutralized. If the Americans share detailed intelligence with Gulf partners, which reporting suggests they have, then Saudi Arabia and the UAE now know that American military power can eliminate Iranian threats with much higher confidence than previously assumed. That makes regional allies less afraid of Iranian retaliation, which means they are more willing to take confrontational positions on issues where they previously would have sought accommodation. Tehran's deterrence strategy relied heavily on strategic ambiguity about underground capabilities. That ambiguity is gone, replaced with strategic transparency that benefits Iran's adversaries. This represents one of the most significant intelligence victories of the 21st century, and it happened so quietly that most analysts did not recognize it until strikes began demonstrating the capability. But let's acknowledge what this intelligence breakthrough has not accomplished, because intellectual honesty requires recognizing limitations. Knowing where every facility is located does not automatically mean you can destroy them all simultaneously. Iran has over 600 identified underground facilities of military significance. Even with the full capacity of American bomber fleets and available precision weapons, destroying all 600 would require sustained campaign lasting weeks. During those weeks, Iran would be launching retaliatory strikes. So comprehensive intelligence does not equal risk-free military action. The intelligence also does not extend perfectly to mobile systems. Iran has truck-mounted missile launchers that can relocate rapidly. Underground facilities are static targets, but mobile launchers are dynamic. Satellites can track them, but there is always a gap between detection and targeting. If Iran launched a surprise missile attack using mobile launchers, some of those missiles would get through even with perfect intelligence about underground storage facilities. There is also the question of what Iran is building right now that intelligence might not yet have cataloged. This intelligence victory reflects 2 decades of surveillance. But Iran continues construction. New facilities undoubtedly exist that are not yet fully mapped. The intelligence advantage is real, but not permanent. It requires constant updating as Iran adapts. From Tehran's perspective, this revelation is catastrophic, but not necessarily fatal. Iranian strategists now understand that underground concealment no longer works against American intelligence. That understanding forces strategic adaptation. Some Iranian officials are likely arguing for greater investment in mobile systems precisely because static underground facilities have become too vulnerable. Others may push for deeper facilities that even bunker busters cannot reach, though the engineering challenges and costs become prohibitive beyond certain depths. There is also a possibility, though intelligence analysts debate this, that Iran intentionally allowed some facilities to be discovered while keeping others genuinely secret. The idea would be that known facilities draw attention away from unknown facilities. This is classic denial and deception doctrine. However, the evidence suggests this is wishful thinking rather than Iranian strategy. The sheer comprehensiveness of demonstrated American strikes indicates intelligence that is genuinely comprehensive rather than partially successful. What remains uncertain is whether American intelligence has similarly comprehensive knowledge of underground facilities in other adversary nations. Does the United States have equally detailed maps of North Korean tunnels? Chinese underground command centers? Russian strategic bunkers? The technologies used against Iran theoretically work anywhere, but each country presents different challenges. North Korea has been building tunnels since the 1950s, giving them decades more experience in concealment. China has resources to build facilities at depths that may exceed current bunker buster penetration capabilities. The Iranian case demonstrates capability, but that does not automatically mean the same capability exists everywhere. So here is what has fundamentally changed. Iran invested 4 decades and $40 billion in underground military infrastructure designed to provide survivability against American airstrikes. American intelligence spent the same 4 decades developing surveillance capabilities specifically designed to defeat underground concealment. The result is comprehensive American knowledge of facilities Iran believed were secret. That knowledge has already been demonstrated through precision strikes that destroyed underground targets with extraordinary accuracy. This represents a fundamental shift in the military balance between the United States and Iran. Tehran can no longer rely on concealment as a defensive strategy. Every underground facility is a known target in American databases. Every bunker complex has precise coordinates attached to it. The strategic ambiguity that Iran cultivated so carefully has been replaced with strategic transparency that overwhelmingly benefits Washington. The broader implications extend to every nation pursuing underground concealment as a defensive strategy. The Iranian case demonstrates that modern intelligence-gathering technologies make it nearly impossible to hide large-scale underground construction from determined adversaries with advanced surveillance capabilities. Tunnels might protect against conventional airstrikes, but they do not protect against being found first. Iran is now facing a strategic environment where its most expensive defensive investment provides minimal actual protection. That reality is forcing Tehran to recalculate deterrent strategies, defensive postures, and the entire framework for how it thinks about conflict with the United States. The recalculation is happening in real time as more facilities get struck, and the extent of American intelligence becomes undeniable. What comes next depends on how Iran adapts. Do they double down on mobile systems? Do they attempt even deeper facilities despite the costs? Do they shift resources toward cyber capabilities or asymmetric warfare? We are watching those decisions unfold. American intelligence is watching Iranian strategic debates, probably with the same comprehensive surveillance that mapped the tunnels in the first place. If this analysis helped you understand how American intelligence achieved what Iran thought was impossible, subscribe and turn on notifications. We are covering the continuing evolution of Operation Epic Fury and what it reveals about capabilities that were supposed to remain classified. The intelligence story is far from over, and we will be tracking every development as it happens.